Welcome back to Pope's Place. If you're returning, we're so glad you're here. And if you're new, welcome. We're so glad to have you. Today we're going to be making Brussels sprouts two different ways. I'm going to do the first part, and Lisa, my mom, is going to do the second part. The first thing I'm going to do is put some salted water on the stove. And just as a general disclaimer, when you hear little tick tick things, if you're a returning visitor, you know that it's Charlie, our dog, is walking around. So I've got one. You can get a bushel that are still attached to the vine. I don't know, whatever Brussels sprouts grow on. Stop. But I just got mine in a bag from the grocery store. So we're going to start out and we're going to cut them in half. You may want to cut them in half using the along the core at the bottom. It's not vitally important, but it does help the leaves stay on a little bit better, so that they don't burn, because we're actually going to put these in the air fryer. I don't know if moms are going to go in the air fryer or not, but these are definitely going to go in the air fryer. Growing up, it wasn't that I didn't think I liked Brussels sprouts. I really didn't like Brussels sprouts. And eating them on their own, I would not love. But maybe 5 years ago, I went to South Beach to visit a good friend of mine. And we ordered, it was almost like dim sum with small plates. And he ordered Brussels sprouts. And you know, when you're trying to be a good guest friend, you try something. And I loved them. And I couldn't believe I loved them. They were so good. So I asked the restaurant afterwards. I messaged them and asked them for the recipe. And they actually gave it to me once I promised I didn't live in town. And this is the recipe that I used. But unfortunately, the restaurant closed. I found out over Christmas, or I would tell you who they were so you could go visit them. But they closed, and but now I get to enjoy their Brussels sprouts forever because they were so generous with their recipe. All right, we're going to continue to chop these and then put them in boiling water, and we're going to parboil them. Par means almost, or something close to being completely boiled. And we'll get back to you when I'm finished doing that. So we'll see you in a minute. Okay, my water is in a rolling boil, and I'm going to put these Brussels sprouts in. Again, always put it away from you so any boiling water, or especially if you're working with grease, doesn't bounce back on you. I'm going to parboil these, which means they're not going to completely cook through, because we are going to also fry them in the air fryer, so we don't want them to be like just mush. I'm going to guess 6 minutes. I'm going to check in about 4, but we'll let you know exactly how long we parboiled them for. It has been about 6 minutes. A little over 6 minutes actually. And I'm going to take my oven mitts off. That'll be a fun cooking video, like do a whole video wearing oven mitts. And I'm going to do something called shock these Brussels sprouts. I'm just putting them in a bowl of ice water. It slows the cooking, and I've been told by cooking network people that it also preserves this beautiful green color. One of my favorite things about Brussels sprouts is that the water turns green, which is weird. So I'm going to have my mom step in. You're going to see her on camera, and she's going to show you how beautiful these Brussels sprouts are. And they smell cabbagey. Let me grab this paper towel. I've emptied the pot that we use to boil our Brussels sprouts in. I'm going to use the flat end of a glass, and I am going, those are hot. I'm going to kind of squish these. I need a spatula. I'm going to squish these because it's going to give us more cooking surface, and put them back in the pot we used to boil it in. So let me smush all of these, and then I'll get back to you, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do next. This really is a fantastic recipe. The reason I put them back in here is that we are going to add a half a teaspoon of pepper, and I'm honestly just going to sort of sprinkle them over the top. A pinch of salt, because we're going to put balsamic vinegar on there a little bit later. We don't need a whole lot of salt. And now I'm going to combine a teaspoon of garlic powder with a tablespoon of nutritional yeast. That is what is going to allow them to get super crispy. And so I'm just going to put this in. And we didn't make all the Brussels sprouts. We're going to make some a little bit later to eat ourselves. So I put about half of that in. And I'm just going to stir it up. We're going to put it in an air fryer on about 375 degrees. I'm going to set it for 6 minutes and start looking at about 4 minutes. So we're going to do that, and I'll show you what they look like when they're finished, and I'll tell you how long it took. Sprouts are in the air fryer. I'm going to put a small pot. We're making a glaze, by the way, a sweet balsamic glaze. I'm going to put a pot on, probably not all the way low, but very close to low. And I'm going to, as they say, measure with your heart. I'm going to put the equivalent of about a tablespoon of a good balsamic vinegar. My garden would be so proud of me for calling it good balsamic vinegar. About, I'm going to say a little bit less than a tablespoon of honey. And we're going to whisk that together. Again, you want it on a low setting. I do have a question for y'all that somebody might know. We have a squeeze bottle that I use to put any kind of glazes on things. I know that putting acidic things can do damage to plastic, and I'm wondering if any of y'all know, like, because if we make a big bunch of this, if we can store it in this. I don't feel super confident, but ketchup has that in it. I don't know. If you know, or if you're a cooking scientist, food scientist, please let us know. So we're going to let this simmer for just a few minutes while I go and check the Brussels sprouts. At about 6 minutes, I checked our Brussels sprouts, and they were crispy, but they didn't have a lot of color. So we turned up the temperature to 400 and cooked it. We set it for 5, and I took it out at about 3. And so they are beautifully colored. I can hear, I hope you can hear how nice and crispy they are. And we're going to cook our next batch. One thing I forgot to tell you, you want to make sure when you use an air fryer, at least if you want things crispy, to put it in a single layer. So we're going to cook our next batch, and then we're going to come back and plate. So all of those cooked, they're brown. They're about as crispy as I like them. My mom said they weren't super crispy. So if you want them more crispy, add more nutritional yeast. Now, I serve it with some sort of creamy dip if people want to dip theirs in there. And then, maybe, I glaze them. This is the honey balsamic glaze that we made. You want it to reduce so that it goes on kind of thick. And apparently making a mess runs in the family. I have more of it than my mom does. This is actually my favorite way to eat Brussels sprouts. You're about to see another way to eat Brussels sprouts that I've never tried, so I'm excited about trying it. So I'm going to sign off, but the video is not over.
Welcome back. Our second Brussels sprouts recipe is an interesting one, made with bacon and heavy cream and a lot of Parmesan cheese. The first thing I'm going to do is to get the bacon started. You take 6 slices of bacon. That's 3. And we're going to cut this up into smaller pieces so that when we put it in the skillet, it fries up quickly and gets crispy. Yeah, Jennifer told you earlier that she was not overly fond of Brussels sprouts. Frankly, neither was I. When I was a lot younger, I didn't much care for them, and we didn't have a whole lot of Brussels sprouts in the south part of the United States when I was growing up, so it didn't much matter. But I did learn to love them later on. I like Jennifer's recipe with the balsamic vinegar. That's an excellent flavor. This is a relatively new recipe to me. My son has used baked Brussels sprouts with Parmesan, so I think the Parmesan is going to be a good flavor when we get to the point where we add that in. I'm just separating these pieces of bacon, again, so that when I put them in the skillet, they will heat up pretty quickly. I'm not going to leave them on a high heat. I had an interesting experience when Jennifer was about 2 years old. I thought that I had turned the heat down on a skillet with bacon in it and stepped away for a few minutes. And when I came back down the hallway, I could see flames licking at the vent hood in the kitchen. I went flying in there to fix the problem. And Jennifer, who I think was 2 years old, was standing very terrified outside the kitchen waiting for me to try to get the smoke out. So I learned a lesson. Don't do that anymore. All right, I'm going to step over and put these in the skillet and turn the skillet on. And we're going to sprinkle these in. Might have used a bigger skillet here. I'm going to leave those in the skillet now. I'll step back over to the counter and we're going to get the garlic ready to go in as soon as this bacon is crisped up. All right, I'm going to get the garlic ready. Remember, I showed you this before. This is an interesting little thing if it works well, and it may not on this because it's too greasy. Oh, what a pain. All right, that's not going to fly. You can't use it if it's greasy. So we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. This one actually doesn't really have much skin on it. I think it already came off. Oh, I can hear the bacon beginning to sizzle behind me. And I'll keep an eye on that as I'm chopping this garlic up. I'm using my older garlic press. The one we tried to use before didn't work quite as well as we had expected it to. You need to have awfully strong muscles to make it work, and I did not. But this one is terrible. I'm going to have to go to garlic press school and find out where to get the best possible garlic presses for older hands to use, I guess. You can see a little bit of the garlic comes out, but it's just not enough. And when you look inside the thing, you see there's all kinds of little pieces of garlic stuck in there that should go through because that's not skin. That is regular garlic and it should go through the press, but it doesn't as well as it should. Well, that's going to be about all I'm going to get. So I'm going to step back over and keep an eye on this bacon. Bacon has crisped up nicely. I'm going to drain it on a paper towel so that excess grease gets off. We will return the bacon to the pan when the Brussels sprouts have finished cooking. Now, when Jennifer made her Brussels sprouts, we had some left over. And rather than waste them, we're using those Brussels sprouts for this recipe as well. Normally, you're going to start with raw Brussels sprouts, but we have leftover parboiled ones. So we're going to cook those in in the bacon grease just until they're a little brown. So it will take less time than the recipe calls for because we're using ones that have been parboiled. Ooh, can you hear that? That is definitely going to crisp these things up. Once we finish with getting these browned, the recipe calls for adding to this skillet the heavy cream, Parmesan cheese, and the salt and pepper, and some chili flakes if you want to add those. That's optional. I'm going to check and see how much of the bacon grease is left. Again, I don't want this to be really greasy, and if I feel like I need to drain the Brussels sprouts after they have browned a little, I will drain them and pour off any excess grease. It's going to take a few minutes, so we'll be back with you shortly. All right, I'm adding the garlic in now because these are really looking beautiful. And we don't want the garlic to burn. I don't know how often I have to say that, but we don't. So I'm going to turn these over a little bit. Oh my goodness. They're looking beautiful. Beautiful.
Can I have a thought, Mom?
Yes.
I think if they had not been parboiled, they might have burnt.
Well, that's true.
I think parboiling them might help them get more done in the middle.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because they're still crisp, tender. The bigger ones are still a little crisp. You know, and honestly, there's not very much grease left in this pan. I don't know what that says about how much grease they've soaked up, but I think we need to add the rest of the ingredients right here in the skillet, stir it around, and see what it looks like at the end. So I'm going to add black pepper, salt, has a little piece of basil in it. Salt. I'm going to add the Parmesan cheese. This is a half cup of Parmesan cheese. I'm going to go ahead and stir this around a little bit. Let the cheese begin to melt before we add the cream in. Now, Jennifer's not a big fan of hot, spicy food, so I'm going to omit the chili flakes from this one, but you can add chili flakes if you want. Now we're adding 1 cup of heavy cream. The cheese has melted. We need to stir this around well. Get the cheese up off the bottom of the skillet. And we're going to let this reduce a little bit so that the cream thickens even more. And at the final step, we'll add the bacon and then serve. We'll be back in a bit. It looks like the sauce is reduced enough for us to add this crispy bacon in. Now we're going to stir it in a bit, but you don't want it too much because you want the bacon still to have that crispiness and the contrast of colors, the brown and the green and the cream color. It's absolutely beautiful dish. I've got a bowl here. I'm going to turn this off and very carefully put this in the bowl. This makes a gorgeous side dish. I think you're really going to like this. And until we see you again, let's keep cooking.